Stephanie Pattison, and I'm a consultant for Nutrena. And today I would like to talk to you about changing your horse's diet when it has a reduced workload. So you might be thinking, well, my horse is pretty consistent year round, and that might be, but here are some thoughts on some times that your horse's workload might change. So let's say you show seasonally, and during show season, your horse is in moderate to heavy work. But then when winter comes, your horse gets the winter off. Another example would be if you're an avid trail rider, you might really ride hard in the spring, summer, and fall months, but take some time off in the winter when the weather's crummy. And finally, the one that none of us like to think about as horse owners, but unfortunately it's inevitable, is injury that results in stall rest or limited turnout. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today are some different feed selections and how those might look differently in your program. So I've got some samples here. I've got a nice high-fat product that's like a pellet, a nugget, some oil. I've got a textured feed here. And then I've got a standard pellet. So when we're talking to consumers about changing their horse's diet because of workload, one of the first things we ask is about the hay. The hay is so important. It is the base of your horse's nutritional diet. It is the foundation of what they need nutritionally. So for today's presentation, I'm not going to talk a lot about hay, but know that if you ever talk to a nutritionist about changing your horse's diet, hay definitely will come up in the conversation. So then the next thing we usually ask is, how much feed do you feed your horse? And this is one of my favorite questions because it's always an interesting answer. Probably the most common answer we get is, I feed a scoop in the morning and a scoop at night. That's perfectly fine. But are you feeding in a 3-quart plastic scoop or a big metal scoop? Another one of my favorites is, well, I feed a coffee can. As you can see, this coffee can has been through a lot with us. So coffee can, are you feeding a big coffee can, a small coffee can, metal, plastic? And then another one we get pretty regularly is, I feed a cup of feed. Well, are you feeding a coffee cup? Are you feeding a measuring cup? Or are you feeding a red Solo cup? So some manufacturers do make cups that have lines on them to kind of give you some guidelines as far as how much the different feeds weigh. So this is our Empower cup. You'll notice it has red marks on one side for Empower Boost and green marks on the other for Empower Balance. And if you were here and you were looking at this, you would see that the balance marks are higher than the boost marks for the 1/2 pound and the 1 pound. So even on our cup here, we've got different lines for the different feeds. So I thought we'd do a little experiment here just to see. So I have a pretty interesting scoop here. This is a scoop scale. So it does have a scale in it. It weighs up to 7 pounds of feed. It's a pretty handy tool for me because I'm a feed nerd and I work in this industry and talk about feed all day, every day. But for the average horse person, this might not be a practical purchase. However, if you are in a barn and you're feeding a lot of different horses, this might be a very valuable purchase for you to have and best understand how much you're feeding your horse. So the first one we're going to weigh here, I'm going to fill it up to the boost line right here. We're going to try this textured feed out. So I've got it right up to that red line. Says it would be a pound of feed. We're going to pour this in my scale, and it is coming out right about 3/4 of a pound. So it's actually less than what this is saying it is. So if you were feeding 3 of these, thinking you were feeding 3 pounds to your horse, you're only feeding 2.5. And if you're doing that twice a day, and someone says, well, how much do you feed your horse? And you say, well, I feed them 6 pounds a day. You're actually only feeding them 5. So let's try this with this textured product, or with this pelleted product here, and see what happens. So again, it's right up to the line for the boost. And this one weighs right at 1 pound. So the pellets weigh very similar to the extruded nugget for the boost, for just a dry pellet. So that's good to know. The other thing you can think about is everyone might measure a little differently in their scoop. To me, a full scoop might be heaping over, it's dropping out as I take it to the stall to dump it in. Other people might say, well, I've got it filled up, pretty full here, but if I get too much more, it starts to overflow, so that's full. So really understanding exactly what you feed is important. So how do you get it weighed if you don't have a scoop scale? Well, if you have access to a shipping scale, that's the next best thing. So what we recommend is whatever your normal amount is for your feed, you scoop it in there, put it in a Ziploc bag, and you weigh it on that shipping scale so that you know my full scoop weighs X amount of this feed. Very important. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is if your horse changes workloads and how you change the diet. So the first one I want to talk about, let's say you've got a horse in heavy work. It's your performance horse. He works for a living 5 to 7 days a week, and bam, he has an injury that results in either complete stall rest or very limited pasture turnout with stall rest. So immediate thing you think of is, my horse cannot have all this feed. He's gonna blow up like a balloon, and I definitely don't need him to have all this extra energy. I'm just gonna take the feed away. Please, please, please do not do that. So a couple of things to think about. So this product here is the ProForce Fuel. So let's say you're feeding the ProForce Fuel, and per the feed tag reading or feeding directions, for a horse in heavy work, he should be getting 1 pound for every 100 pounds of body weight. So for easy math, if your horse weighs 1,000 pounds, hopefully he was getting 10 pounds of this a day. Now that he is in light work or no work, he's maintenance, you think, well, I'm just gonna cut this feed in half and see what happens. So what you really should do is check out the feed tag and see what it says in the feeding instructions for a horse that's just on maintenance level program. So if you read the ProForce Fuel tag, it will say that a horse that's a maintenance level horse should be getting between 0.25 and 0.5 pounds per 100 pounds of body weight. So again, for your 1,000 pound horse, you could reduce that as far down as 2.5 pounds a day, still be getting him the nutrition he needs, but without the extra fat and calories. The second scenario I want to talk about is a horse that's maybe moderate work, and on we've got a 12% protein, 6% fat in either one of these. This is our Triumph Select product in a pellet and a textured. So when you read the tag for a horse in moderate work for this Triumph pellet, it says that he should be getting 0.5 pounds per 100 pounds of body weight. So that's 5 pounds a day for a 1,000-pound horse. Most horses in moderate work probably get around that 5 to 6 pounds of feed a day. So let's say you were feeding that, everything was good, and then bam, injury. Results in reduced workload, stall rest, high energy horse, you need to make a change. So you pull out the feed tag because you think, well, maybe I should just reduce this down to a handful or reduce it in half. And when you read that feed tag, the feeding directions for a horse in light work were the same for a horse in maintenance. So if you reduce that anymore, you're now shorting your horse on the vitamins and minerals that this feed is formulated to be fed at and not reaching the levels that your animal needs. So that's when we need to start thinking about a diet balancer. So what a diet balancer is, it's a highly concentrated vitamin mineral feed with amino acids, pre and probiotics, that gets your horse all the good stuff without those extra fat, calories, and carbohydrates. So for this horse, you could easily transition to a diet balancer. If you read the Empower Top Line Balance tag, it will say for a 1,000-pound horse they should be at roughly 0.8 to 3 pounds a day. So you as the consumer really need to find that medium that works for you, but feeding just under a pound or right at a pound of a diet balancer is going to get your horse everything they need while they're on stall rest and light work. Keep their hair coat looking great, keep their hooves looking great, keep that muscling where it needs to be, the top line strong, all without the exercise that they normally have. So that's when a diet balancer comes into play. Hopefully, I answered some questions today and helped you better understand how your horse's nutritional needs might change as his workload changes. If you have any questions, you can always inquire at www.nutrenaworld.com. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.